Do you feel this? Do you feel that dark abyss?
17 years later, you question how a beloved film like Dead Man's Chest received pretty much an overall 50-50 reaction when it first came out. Or do you question if nostalgia is now a big part for many to hold a film like Dead Man's Chest on a high pedestal? Or is it the result of a high percentage of laziness, garbage from once a beloved and respected studio? Many look back and think, hey, maybe this wasn't actually that bad. Well, I did some digging myself and went back and rewatched Dead Man's Chest, and well, it's aged like fine wine to me. Even better actually. Now that may be a stretch and I sound like I had too much rum, but many of the drawn criticisms were for it being too much. It tried to juggle too many storylines in one film, and it was just a whole lot for a part 1 to an epic finale of pirate egos clashing in a maelstrom.
Boy, motor pistol.
Now I don't see it that way. I see it much differently. Gore is a very clever director. He loves his films to be bigger than they seem. Curse of the Black Pearl was by the book, less complex. The distinctive nature between each of the characters played a huge role in terms of memorability, making the film very iconic to pulp culture. A man who wants his cursed ship back pretty much was the story. But like I said, when you see this shot, you know where exactly that's from and who that is. A job well done. Now, Dead Man's Chest could have easily done an entire story based on Barbossa's return and his revenge. Seems like an easy cash grab story surrounding a very lazy idea, but it's far more clever. It pulls many overarching stories from different characters surrounded by this one big thing, which is the survival of piracy. Dead Man's Chest is and does feel like a part 1, setting up these very characters and their next journey, whether it's avoiding death at all costs, cruelty and mourning through heartbreak, or the freedom of freeing a long-lost loved one from a bonded curse, or the defeat of a culture and taking the control for yourself. Dead Man's Chest is far better than people perceive it as, and I'm here to tell you why. So grab some rum and let's get on with it.
Why is the rum always gone?
The film opens up with the distraught Elizabeth in her wedding, wondering why Will has been arrested until the biggest douchebag of the trilogy arrives to take command, Beckett, who's appointed to the rest of Will Turner and Miss Elizabeth Swann for their acted defiance in saving the glorious Captain Jack Sparrow from his arranged execution. Speaking of Jack, in a prison hold where men have their eyes ripped out by crows, men being dragged in chains, which looks like an execution center of some sort. Neat stuff, and certainly a very disturbing image with no filter. I f***ing love it. Caskets drop in the rivers and a shark darting far up.
Sorry, mate.
Jack arrives on his beloved Pearl with his crew questioning what's his next big adventure. Well, he takes out a drawing of a key, which he does not have in possession currently, but this key unlocks the heart of Davy Jones, which Jack also doesn't have. And the crew have no choice but to take the captain's word for it. Meanwhile, at Port Royal, which has been occupied by Beckett, Will receives an unusual deal. Beckett wants Will to be a double agent and grab the compass from Jack, which holds something special and can point to whatever he wants the most. He even sees there is a bigger treasure in the sea, something far, far bigger.
Bring back that compass, or there's no deal.
Jack the rum lover heads to the basement to find some more rum, but runs into a familiar face, or somewhat of a familiar face, Bootstrap Bill, who's been sent by Davy Jones himself to warn Sparrow, his debt that he promised to raise the Pearl from the depths of the locker and sail it for 13 years as captain. In return, be part of his crew for 100 years. This very debt has reached its end and he's coming for him.
You won't be able to talk yourself out of this.
Jack Sparrow, in panic, orders his men to travel to any land, as the sea is not the safest place for him at the very moment. Will Turner makes a promise to Elizabeth as he works to fulfill his deal that he will release her. Meanwhile, her father has other plans as he uses links to England to leave Port Royal. But Beckett always seems to be one step ahead, while Elizabeth is always 2 steps further, and threatens Beckett to let her go and search for Will, which Beckett has no choice but to release her. William spots the Pearl on Isla de Palagostas, I think I said that right, which is a cannibal island. As you can see, Will is about to be cooked for a feast, and Jack, who's treated as a god, is also about to be cooked, as they believe their god is trapped in human flesh, hence Jack Sparrow being dressed as a king. Eventually, the crew escape this very island, sorry dog,
Good doggy.
And Jack Sparrow says his very classic line.
Captain Jack Sparrow.
Will is begging Jack to give him the compass so he can free Miss Elizabeth, but Jack sees other uses. Just like in the first film, he shall use Will as leverage once again to find the key and the heart to Davy Jones, which is still thumping buried somewhere. Jack visits an old friend to seek some guidance and some help to keep this black spot hidden from Jones. She even explains who Davy Jones is as a man who was once loved but heartbroken as he locked his heart away from the world.
Cab Optima.
The crew set on their way to find Jones, just like Sparrow from Curse of the Black Pearl. He uses Will to settle his debt with Jones. And the creak and the waves and the horror of the fallen crewmates who tremble at the sight of a squid thumping towards them, smoking a pipe, and says these words that will be remembered across the Caribbean.
Do you feel death?
Killing those who don't fear death and who talk up against him, he spots Will, who isn't even half dead, and questions why he is here. A very well shot pop of Davy Jones threatens Sparrow for 99 souls as he is worth 100. But Jack refuses to join and cleverly twists his promise in retrieving these 100 souls. Davy Jones keeps Will as a cost for 1 soul. Jack, looking to expand his crew, arrives to Tortuga in a very Deadpool-esque recruiting montage, which ends up with Norrington, who's battered and full of shit, literally, in the worst state of mind for simply being outmastered by Jack Sparrow. Yeah, even Elizabeth tags along, who has no idea what Jack has done with Will. The clashing thunder and the waves hitting the Dutchman as she sails the sea, crewmen screaming while Davy Jones grieves playing his organ. A mistake from both Turners turns into Will being punished by their crew. Davy Jones forces Will's father to whip him, or by the hands of another Dutchman member.
The cat's out of the bag, Mr. Turner.
Bill is whipping his own son, just hurting him to save him from much worse pain. Bill connects with Will and he speaks to them about the Dutchman and its operations. Wyvern interrupts and tells the two of the heart is the Dutchman. Stab the heart.
Don't stab the heart.
Revealing the key is with the captain. Will proposes a plan to reveal the key from Davy Jones, but challenging him to a game of waging their years of service. He challenges Davy Jones to show the key, which he does, but his father lied. Despite unfortunately not knowing the original plan, thus he must spend eternity on the Dutchman. Will snatches the key and escapes, arriving on the island where him and Jack Norrington battle it out for the key for the heart. One for running away from death, the other seeking redemption, while the other is saving a loved one. They battle in the most outrageous ways like a hamster wheel. Now, is it cheesy? Yes. Does it defy the laws of physics? Maybe. Is it fun? Also yes. So I don't give a fuck. I'm enjoying a very well choreographed fight. Nothing in these movies scream realistic, so fuck off, critics. Norrington steals the heart, falsely draws Jones's crew away from Miss Elizabeth and Will Turner and Jack Sparrow, but the crew of the Black Pearl face the wrath of
The Kraken!
tentacles storming the ship, tearing it piece by piece. Jack, who's currently cowardly boating away, thinks twice and changes course to save the crew and his precious pearl. One shot, the tentacles feel the fire of the barrels burning into its flesh, but the beast isn't quiet but only angry. Jack commands everyone to abandon the ship. He meets Elizabeth, but she tricks him into handcuffing him to the pearl for the sake of other crewmates' safety. She definitely took drastic measures and feeds Sparrow alongside the pearl to the Kraken, who send the two to Davy Jones' locker. Norrington is reinstated. Davy Jones realized the very day Sparrow is always ahead of the game, and the good old Captain Barbossa returns chewing his apple to begin his next big quest at World's End. I really do miss Gore Verbinski's films. Such a rich nature and feel that modern films lack, visually pleasing with every scene feeling cinematic and important. Not a single dull sight. It is always going to be hard to match such success. The first Pirates of the Caribbean film, but by no means this reached those standards. Curse of the Black Pearl was simply seen as a one-off journey of these characters of self-realizing the pirate culture with a very ghostly atmosphere, feeling something out of this world and unique to that very film. With 2 sequels in the next chapter, Dead Man's Chest had its own conclusion conclusion, but is a nice setup to Outworld's end. Yes, many storylines are in play, which many find to be too much for one film, but really taking a deep dive, they all connect in some way to one point. Davy Jones, the king of the sea who has lost his morality from his heart being ripped from him figuratively and literally. He's hidden the biggest treasure in the sea, his heart, away from the reaches of men like Sparrow, so no one can control the sea but him. Not much is delved on who and how Davy Jones became the man he is in this film, only tales from who later is revealed as Calypso, but we can gather his look is merely a curse and the result of his loved one betraying his trust. He is an immediate threat to everyone with the fear of a beast he controls, the Kraken, his pitbull that he lets off the leash when someone must be sent to his locker. He raises fear into Jack Sparrow, who is seen as fearless, but the idea for Sparrow to dread on the Dutchman for 100 years, Davy Jones is his nightmare. Even for Will, who wants to free his father from the Dutchman, but only Jones can control his fate, and so he does. That lie to keep Will safe, Davy Jones heeds a bill giving him a life sentence on the Dutchman. But his heart is the key to saving the sea for most, but it's certainly everyone's home run. Many layers to Davy Jones' character. He isn't truly evil, he even seems to regret when forcing Bill to whip his own son, or even when Jack mocks the word love towards Davy Jones, he feels the oppression of such a word that has been disloyal to him, and puts himself back to his cruel nature, or even his way of expressing himself through the organ which defines his theme throughout the film. This simply is the beginning to a villain who simply is underrated in pop culture, as we've seen some of the best startups to a great story. It's simply another character-driven film where personal stories is the main focal point, where there's some crossroads with each making it all feel intertwined, hence which the complaint of too much. But a basic understanding of what drives each person, it's an easy follow for a film. I've listed every character's goals at the start of the video, so no need for myself to repeat, but it's another way of uniquely telling a story. There isn't an overarching main story in this film, it's merely a setup to Clyde Davy Jones in the end, who has been built as this immortal foe. Very rare you see films achieve this, as it relies on one factor, which is making your characters likable and have distinctive personalities which don't feel bland or overly annoying. Like with Jack Sparrow's character, his goofiness is his smartness. He makes it up as it goes. His run, his mannerisms, his love for rum is a nice distinctive personality, which many, including myself, have loved. Even when the two films after this brilliant trilogy hit the pile of pig shit, he still very well carried those films because of how he is. Even Elizabeth, who has embraced the pirate culture, has made many friends and acquaintances along the way that are active leaving Jack on the ship, which is the right course of action, to be honest, to save the others from the beast that swarms the sea. She had to make the decision to save the others. Pirates, by the way. She very well made that risky decision, not because she hated Sparrow, but because she cared. Will Turner, who has gone full pirate in his life, the nature which he detested in the first film, but isn't snarly nor greedy like the rest. He is the hero of the story and a son who wants to save his father, who he barely knows. They even made Norrington, of all characters, intriguing in this film. His own motives of seeking self-importance and redemption from his Royal Navy, that heart that everybody wants, is his meal ticket to a much higher standard of life, which Jack in the first place snatched from him. This perfectly builds the world they're in, expanding its lore with gods, myths, curses, superstitions, which take place around the 1700s. And some do feel far-fetched, but it isn't trying to feel real, but more of its own world, with aspects taken from reality or messages like what George did with Star Wars. This helps you connect with the film and not making the film very boring in our eyes, but having that very distinctive feel from other franchises. CGI has taken over Hollywood, unfortunately, with many directors now pushing for digital effects instead of practical effects, and VFX artists taking much crunch time and much more work hours, draining them, only to make the quick buck, as studios don't want to pay that much or don't want to make a very nice finishing product most of the time. While Pirates of the Caribbean, although extremely difficult to film on water, makes sense, used many practical effects, where they can give the actors and audience a believability feel using miniatures, building an entire ship, or filming on real-life locations. Not cheap green scene to avoid costs, even the CGI holds up extremely well. With Davy Jones, which Gore used motion capture to display various facial expressions from Bill Nye. No, not that Bill Nye, this Bill Nye. The man who played a rattlesnake that has a gun on his tail, which is also directed by Gore Verbinski. But he essentially made a motion capture to make Jones still feel like he was once human and not all squid and tentacly, or even the Kraken at the end, which the beast has many details, and lighting to feel real like a giant octopus is destroying the Great Pearl. So much time and effort that was put into this film that it's simply gorgeous to watch. Not only is the cinematography fantastic, but the score from Hans Zimmer is hard-hitting. It's like Gore told Hans Zimmer to make scenes feel epic, and well, we get this. Or even when there's an eerie, depressing dread, we get the organ playing in the background as a symbol of grievance for Davy Jones. Zimmer's way of utilizing score to tell a story is very underappreciated in its own right that many overlook in these films, and it just shows how important music is to filmmaking. It's simply a brilliant sequel which does its own things and doesn't shy away of taking story risks that aren't very stupid. But you love it. It's not nostalgia that makes the film great, it's just a great film. Well, at least in my eyes. I can watch it hundreds of times and see new snippets Gore and his team placed on this magical world of pirates. I will cover at World's End at some point in the coming months. As for now, I shall venture off. So yeah, see ya.